Hey everyone, I'm going to be giving the lecture today. Liam's taking a little break, and today we're going to be talking about rethinking listening. Okay, so before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the tradition of custodianship and law of the country on which the University of Sydney campuses stand, and pay my respects to those who have cared and continue to care for country. So, what will I learn in this lecture? In this video, you'll learn to think critically about listening. We'll also be discussing some philosophical ideas regarding hearing and listening. So I will be talking a lot about philosophy and critical theory today, which might be a little bit hectic for you, but bear with me. Note down any questions and you can pop them in the comments on the YouTube channel. You can send me an email, and of course we can go over them in the tutorial as well. Also, make sure you watch till the end because I've got a really cool story about ghosts for you. Okay, rethinking listening. I wanted to start off today by talking about Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes was a French literary theorist, an essayist, a philosopher, a critic, and a semiotician, which is kind of a fancy word for someone who studies signs, not like street signs, but symbols. And Roland Barthes wrote this really amazing essay called Listening, which is from a collection called Music's Body, and it's found in this book here. So he begins this essay by stating, hearing is a physiological phenomenon, listening is a psychological act. Really fascinating concept. So let's break it down a little bit. Barthes is saying here that hearing is something that's innate. It's something that's ongoing. We don't have earlids like we do eyelids. And it's also something that is physical, that's experienced by the body. Listening, in contrast to that, is something that's cognitive. It's a decision, and it's something that relies on attention. So Barthes also discusses sound as the very sense of time and space. He talks about domestic space, that of the house, the apartment, as a space of familiar, recognised noises, whose ensemble forms a kind of household symphony. And it's upon this that listening then takes place. And Barthes distinguishes listening as something of intelligence and of selection. And he also talks about how this background symphony becomes too loud, then listening then becomes difficult. Barthes describes three ways in which we listen. He describes the way we listen like for an alert, like an animal would listen to locate their prey. We also listen to decipher codes or signs. And he finally discusses a psychoanalytic listening between conscious and unconscious, which is not entirely relevant to us today. So Barthes is saying that we are listening in many different manners and responding to different stimuli in very different ways. And a lot of this is divided, of these different ways of listening are divided by attention. And they're being pulled in different ways by different stimuli. From here we can think about how sound can locate the listener within an environment. Sound gives you clues to locate you in a particular position within space. If you think of going on a sleepover as a little kid and listening to that new environment was something that was quite disorienting at times. Sound can also territorialize space. And this is sort of elaborated on by Barthes in this essay as well. And this idea you can think of like witnessing a particularly loud neighbour or someone approaching your front door. You can listen for this approach, and those territories of your territory and that individual's territory slowly converge. Another quote from Barthes: think of all these horror films which rely on our listening for the alien, on our bewildered expectation of the irregular noise which will disturb our oral comfort. Listening can also link you to something outside of yourself. Finally, listening is something that is a very physical experience, or hearing as well, which I'll discuss further in part 2. Okay, so all of these things do feed into our work as sound designers, and it's quite an interesting thing to think about. So why is this important? As designers, we do need to be aware of this, how our sounds are being experienced by the body, and how they're being experienced within an environment. And I mean this both in an acoustic sense, but also how they blend with other elements. There are inherently multiple stimuli that any individual sound is being heard amongst. And it's also interesting to think about how it might change the environment, how that stimuli might shift and territorialize a particular space. Okay, sorry, the cool story is at the end of the next video, so you're going to have to keep watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.